I am lost inside my mind, sing me the hope I cannot find. When my despair has left me blind, sing me the tune I've left behind. Will you sing over me? Will you sing over me? Sing of the goodness I cannot see. Will you sing over me? When all the grief pours through my hands, when I've forgotten
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, good morning, wherever you find yourself in the world. We're so happy that you are here with us today. My name is Brianna Russell, and I, with joy, serve on the team at Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries as the Director of Engagement. If you don't know about our ministry, I like to say we're a small but mighty organization that equips the global church to support mental health and well-being. We've been having these conversations online for the last month as part of Mental Health Awareness Month in the US. The UK had its own week and Canada had its own week. But for the entire month, we've tried to join our voices with the many to raise awareness around mental health and well-being. These conversations are part of that campaign. And as we end out the month, we're so delighted to have one final conversation to have with you today. Our theme for the month has been around learning from listening. And I think you might find this to be true too, but we think that listening can be a holy act. At Sanctuary, we believe so much in the importance of listening to voices of people with lived experience of mental health challenges. We heartily believe that the church can learn so much from listening and hearing people's stories in their own words. It teaches us in many ways how to be more welcoming, how to be communities of true belonging, no matter where a person is in their mental health journey, whether they're languishing or they're flourishing. So it's such a joy to be with you. I probably already said that, but I mean it, so I can say it twice. I do recognize that it's a little bit strange to imagine ourselves being together where I'm just talking to my computer and hoping that there's someone on the other end of this digital line that is listening or that is here and present. And I guess the hope is that maybe we can try and be a little bit more embodied together here. So if you are joining us live, or if you're rewatching afterwards, maybe just drop in the chat where you're watching from, and why you're excited to be part of this conversation. It's good that you exist, and it's good that you are here. We're glad that you're here, so thanks for being with us. Today we have a really special conversation. If you haven't watched the previous conversations, we featured Dr. Hilary McBride. We also featured Reverend Dr. John Swinton. And today we have a beautiful conversation between Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries CEO, Daniel Whitehead, and Kay Warren. You may be familiar with Kay. She's an author, a speaker, and co-founder of one of the largest churches in the US. She also lost her son to suicide and is a mental health advocate. Kay founded an incredible organization called Hope for Brighter Tomorrows, offering hope and healing to families impacted by mental health challenges. I love this. They dream of a future where no parent has to walk alone. As a Christian nonprofit organization, they strengthen families impacted by mental health challenges and provide guidance for churches to support these families. They do this through high-touch events, trusted resources, and strategic collaborations. We're so grateful that there's space for us to have this conversation with Kay today. Somebody's just commented that maybe my AirPods are buzzing, or you're hearing some buzzing in the background. So I want to acknowledge that and apologize. And whilst we listen to the conversation, we'll be sure to try and fix that. So apologies in advance for that. So this conversation that we're about to hear is not graphic, but I do want to mention that Kay shares very openly about the loss of her son Matthew to suicide. So it's probably quite important that you check in with yourself now about whether this is a good time for you to hear this. It's also important, as we listen to other people's stories, that we recognize we can't predict the outcomes of our own story by hearing someone else's. So as we listen with attentive hearts and ears, recognize that our story may have similarities, but it may also have differences. And we actually grow the possibility of understanding who the church is the more we hear from other people's stories. So to take away the buzzing in your ear and to get on with hearing from this incredible conversation, please let's listen and learn from Daniel Whitehead and Kay Warren.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Whitehead, CEO of Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month in the US, and May also holds both Canadian and UK Mental Health Weeks, as well as Maternal Mental Health Week. At Sanctuary, our goal is to offer you lots of meaningful content in the month of May, and this year our focus has been on learning from listening. And we've been hosting conversations with Sanctuary ambassadors and friends to learn from their expertise on how listening is a meaningful way to learn from and care for one another along our mental health and faith journeys. This week is our final conversation, and I'm so delighted to be here with my friend Kay Warren to talk about youth mental health. In case she needs to be introduced, which I will, Kay co-founded Saddleback Church with her husband Rick in Lake Forest, California in 1980, where they served until Rick's retirement in September 2022. And after the death of her son Matthew, who lived with serious mental illness for most of his life, Kay founded Saddleback's Hope for Mental Health initiative as a way to support individuals and family members of loved ones with mental illness and suicidal ideation. In 2019, Kay started Breathe, a ministry to support parents of children with serious mental illness. And Breathe events include weekend retreats, online retreats, and free Zoom calls with mental health professionals. And that then evolved into a not-for-profit called Hope for Brighter Tomorrows. Kay was a board member of the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention, is active in mental health and suicide prevention efforts in Orange County, California. Kay is the author of Sacred Privilege, Your Life and Ministry as a Pastor's Wife, Choose Joy Because Happiness Isn't Enough, and Say Yes to God, a Call to Courageous Surrender. She's also the co-author of Foundations, a popular systematic theology course used by churches worldwide. And she's currently working on another book. Kay, welcome, and tell us about your new book.
Well, first of all, it's always good to have a conversation with you, Daniel. So thanks for the invitation. I am working on two books right now. Actually, I have definitely bitten off more than I can chew, but I'm writing a book right now that is going to be a small little book for parents. It's very niche. It is for parents who have lost a child to suicide. So it's going to be a very small, nothing that someone who is in deep grief has to really stretch. It's going to be very practical. So I'm writing that. And then I'm writing another book that is not just about suicide, but it's for anyone in grief who's lost a person that they dearly love. So trying to encapsulate all the things and mostly the comfort and the hope that God's given to us in the years since Matthew died. I also I also have this little note taped to my desk, which of course you probably can't read, but it just says it will feel so good to finish the books because I need that inspiration for myself.
Yeah. And I'm sure every book you write, Kay, that's the last one. I'm not going to do this to myself again. And then
yeah, it's like, why do I do this? This one is more of a calling, I would say, even more than anything. It's a shepherding of our story. And so I do feel God has called me to do these things, even though it's really hard.
Well, we're so grateful you're doing it. And thank you for paying the price so that others can be seen and heard, which is the theme of why we're talking today. So, Kay, when you think of your own life, can you share an experience of being deeply listened to and how that changed your self-understanding or the way you felt about an experience?
Yeah. I think one of the times that I needed someone to listen to me the most deeply was I was going through breast cancer, and I at that time I was an advocate for people living with HIV and AIDS and orphans and vulnerable children. So I was traveling. I was a global advocate. I was traveling around the world, seeing people in some of their most desperate, refugee camps and people dying under trees and mothers, asking the question, who's going to take care of my children when they find out, that I died of AIDS. I mean, it was a very, very difficult but powerful advocacy work that I was doing. And then in the middle of that, I got breast cancer. And I remember one day talking with a really dear friend, like one of my best friends in the world. And she was also on that same journey with me of traveling around the world. And we were seeing people in their suffering. And I just one day just was overcome with the suffering, my own and the suffering of other people. I was not doing well in the chemotherapy. I was very sick, and it was just awful. And I remember looking at her and saying, Elizabeth, what do I do with this? I am suffering. It's awful. And I said, but I live in the West. I have all my needs. I can get all the medical care I need. I have people like you who love me and support me. I am facing the potential of losing my life, but I have everything. What about all those people that we have seen around the world who are going through their own terrible pain? Where is God? I couldn't fit it into my God boxes. I didn't have the theology to fit that kind of suffering. And Elizabeth didn't tell me that I was a terrible Christian for, asking God why was all this suffering, or that I was feeling angry with him and feeling guilty about my own self. And there was just so much suffering. She looked at me with tears coming down her face. She took my hand and she said, I don't know. But you and I are going to go to Jesus with this. I've never forgotten it. I can still remember my desperation that day and her loving me enough to just hold my hand, weep with me, tell me she didn't have any good answers, but she wasn't going to leave me. I will never forget that.
Yeah, what a gift. And so much wisdom sits behind that response, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of became a model, for me and some other places in my life, just the way that she carried my pain, heard it, validated it, didn't try to explain it away, minimize it. She held it with me.
Yeah. Now, when I hear that example, in my brain, I go to the opposite, and I think, I've been in those conversations where you're with someone and they're almost forcing you through what you're saying. They're going, and you're like, are you listening? So I wonder, in your experience, going from the sublime example of your friend, in your experience, what happens when listening is either absent or hurried, especially when someone's experiencing a mental health challenge?
You have to take the time to listen. And if you're not going to listen, it means you didn't give your time. And Rick, my husband, has always said that you spell love Time. And so when we won't, either because we're busy or we're distracted by our own stuff, we've got enough on our own minds, and we are trying to rush somebody through their story or not really listen, we are giving them, we're saying to them, I'm sorry, but you are not worth, we don't like to think of it this way, but we're saying, I don't love you enough in this moment to give you the one thing that you need more than anything, which is my time and my attention. And the thing about time, it really is our most valuable gift to somebody, because it's the only non-renewable resource that we have. To feel like somebody doesn't have the time for you to really pay attention, it ends up feeling like you don't really love me.
Yeah.
And then you're left with, well, then I'll just have to carry this by myself.
Yeah. And it's funny, I feel that tension even as a parent, even in small things, when there are moments when it's like, I can't do this now. I have to go do this. Like, I have to go to this appointment, and there's even a pain in me that goes, it shouldn't be like this. I should be able to give you everything because I do love you. But I wonder, when we think about parents who are walking alongside a child maybe experiencing a mental health challenge, what have you come to believe about the role of listening, perhaps in terms of both the possibilities and the limits?
Yeah. And I really want to rush to say, what I just said is the ideal world. We don't live in the ideal world. We live in the real world. And there's no way there was no way I, as a parent, was able to give my children the exact thing that they needed every single moment that they needed. There were moments in which I would say, I am rushing out the door. But I think in those moments, it's to be able to say, but I will be home tonight at 7. I want to hear everything you have to say. It's not just saying, yeah, we'll get together at some point. No, it's like, if you can at that moment, at least circle around enough to say, you matter to me, and we are going to talk about this later, and I will be back. So that's the real world. But I also think of something that Robert Wright, he was the former, I think, labor secretary under President Clinton. And he said, kids are like clamshells. They only open up periodically. But when they do, there are these beautiful pearls inside. He said, but the trick is, because they only open up occasionally, if you're not there and that's the moment they open up, clamshell closes back up. And so I have thought of that so many times in my parenting and grandparenting is these people in front of me have pearls to give me. But the only way I'm going to get them is if I'm actually with them. So proximity, and that means time, do have to happen for us to get those pearls. And then on the more negative side, or the realistic side, is particularly if someone has a mental illness, I just think of also as my son became more and more ill with the mental illnesses that just kind of took over his life.
Yeah.
There were times he was really hard to hear because the things he said were mean. They were cruel. He was mad. He was not in his right thinking. He said violent things. He said painful things. He said sometimes things that didn't make sense. And so that can be on the other side of stuff. You do have to protect yourself, even as a parent or a loved one, from that kind of abusive speech that can sometimes be at play. I think one of the places that Matthew and I used to go round and round, and particularly before I really understood that I couldn't talk him out of his feelings, or that I couldn't even talk him out of some of his delusions or some of his beliefs. I used to try to tell him, you have an illness and you need to be in therapy and you need to take medication. And there would be so many times he would I don't need medication. And I'm not sick. You are the ones who are sick. I'm not the one who's ill. You guys are the ones who are ill. And so we just spent hours and ended up pulling the relationship apart sometimes because I kept thinking if I could just say it one more time or say it a little bit louder or, something that he would get that he really did need that. And it wasn't until later that I read Dr. Javier Amador's book, I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. And Dr. Amador talks about his older brother, Henry, who had schizophrenia and never did believe that he had anything wrong with him, never believed he needed to take medication, never believed that anything was happening. And Dr. Amador says, I used to play that same game that I did with Matthew, which is just to try to talk him into it. If I can just convince you, then you'll take your medication or you'll get therapy. And Dr. Amador said, too often it's useless. If someone has a fixed belief that they are well and they don't need any of this stuff, then all you're going to do is tear the relationship apart. So he's written this book, I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. So maybe some of the parents, listening to this would want to get that. And he established something called the LEAP Institute, which stands for listen. It's all based on listening, empathizing, accepting, and then looking for partnerships. He has a way of helping parents who are trying to talk to their child of any age, maybe who doesn't think they're ill, doesn't understand that they need help, and they're wasting all this time tearing their relationship apart, trying to convince them. He has this other approach. Now, when I learned that made all the difference in how not just I would talk to Matthew, but how I talk to anybody who sees things differently than I do. And it all starts with listening. But it's listening not with the idea of how can I convince you that I'm right, but with the idea that what matters here is our relationship. And so how can I use this listening to actually increase our relationship?
Yeah, such wise words for the time that we live in, where we can feel so fractured and so connected. And it applies to so many things, doesn't it? It applies to so many areas of life and in connecting with someone when we listen. Absolutely.
And that's what I was saying. It started kind of with this idea of, well, how can I talk, to my son who definitely has a certain perspective, with my son who didn't really understand that he was ill, but I'm having a conversation maybe with a friend who that person sees the world differently than I do. And so if I just keep saying it again or louder or, with a little more force that somehow I'm going to change their mind, it's not going to happen. But if I look at it through, I'm listening to you, I really want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to look for the places we can agree. I'm going to empathize with how hard you find that to be. And is there a place we can find agreement? It's a strategy for communication that is applicable across the board.
Very good. Now, Kay, after Matthew died, many people, I'm sure, or I hope, would have wanted to support you and Rick. And I wonder, what did you guys need most in terms of how they listened to you in your grief? And what made the difference for you to feel seen and accompanied at that time?
Yeah. I think if someone goes through a traumatic event or something that, or deep grief, or there's some kind of real sorrow, there's really a need to talk about it generally, and to talk about it and kind of to keep talking about it and to kind of keep talking about it. And the friends who ended up being the ones who were the most helpful to us were those who really let our pain be theirs. They weren't just interested in us, I don't know, going back to the people that we used to be, or when are we gonna stop hurting so much so that our friends are more comfortable with us, But they really just let us grieve and mourn. They took our pain on themselves, and they were willing to accept the fact that we were different. That trauma and grief had changed us forever, that we weren't the same people, and they didn't keep trying to force us to be who we used to be.
It can feel so awkward for people, can't it, to ask a question or to open up a response when maybe it's a subject that people feel vulnerable or scared of. And it's interesting you're writing about grief, because I think of a conversation I had recently with a friend where we were eating a meal together, and I knew his father had just passed away. And as we were eating, not in a flippant way, but also just in a very natural way, I said, "How is your journey with grief going?" And it totally caught him, and he became emotional, and he said, no one's asked me that. Thank you for asking me that. No, he said, no one wants to talk about that. Yeah. So again, it's like, if we can find the bravery sometimes just to open it up and give people permission, that can be a really healing and helpful thing for people.
Well, and sometimes people ask the question, you asked it in a way that was very specific, but here's what people tend to do instead. How are you? And if you're a person who's in grief, that is the most difficult question to answer, because it's like, well, do I tell you that I'm dying inside? Do I say that I'm numb? Do I say I cried myself to sleep the last 3 days? Do I just say, hey, great and fine? I mean, what level do you want me to answer that? But you were compassionate. You brought it up, and you brought it up in a way that said, how is your journey with grief going? Which still allowed that person to respond on a level that was, sometimes I got to the places I would just say, I'm doing all right. Other times I would not even, if I couldn't even answer that, like, how are you? I might say, I would avoid it completely, and I would say, hey, it's so good to see you. I would just bypass because I didn't know how to answer.
Yeah.
But you were in a setting in which that answer could take some time. It showed you were willing to listen. Sometimes when people say, how are you? It's just the social thing that we do. And you're like, I don't know how much you want to know. But by saying, how's the journey with grief? Or sometimes what I say now to people is, how are you doing today? Or what's it like? What's today like? Which is a little bit different than that question none of us know how to answer, which is, how are you? The other thing I would say about people after Matthew passed away, the people that were helpful, it was talking to people who had gone through the same experience. There was real value in talking to those friends, none of whom who had lost a child to suicide, but they loved us and were really willing to enter in with us. But I also gained a tremendous amount of support and comfort from talking to other parents who had lost children to suicide. There was something about the Me Too that I didn't have to give any explanations. I didn't have to defend why I was feeling this or feeling that, but there was a lot of validation. Okay, wait, that's so good. I'm not crazy. I'm not weird because I'm feeling this. So the power of talking to people with the same experience, that peer support, invaluable. And I can't recommend that highly enough.
So true. Well, okay, you founded Hope for Brighter Tomorrows, but I mean, originally the way that morphed was your heart for parents of children with serious mental illness.
Yeah.
And what are the kinds of things that parents in that community, what do we need to hear from them? Things that perhaps aren't being said anywhere else in their lives, including in their churches.
I heard Adam Young, therapist. I heard him say, he came on one of our podcasts and he just said something to the effect of, I just want you, and he's talking to, our parents, I just want you to know that you are carrying a heavier load of emotional pain and distress than most parents ever will. Now, I'm interviewing him. I was not expecting him to say that, but those words came out of his mouth and I burst into tears. I mean, I had to grab my tissues, my Kleenex. I just cried for the next few minutes I might carry on but something about having somebody validate that yes, that is what we as parents who have children with serious mental illness feel, but we're typically made to feel in the church that we just need to pray more, that we need to, confess some sin, that we need to change our ideas about mental illness. And by the way, maybe it really isn't mental illness. Maybe it's a parenting issue. Maybe it's a sin issue in your kid. Those are the messages we get. But to have somebody look us in the eye and say, I recognize that you are carrying a heavier emotional burden than most parents, was the most validating thing he could say. It was the tenderest, the most compassionate. For our parents to come to their faith community and hear that over the judgment or the shaming and the blaming or the questioning our faith. Listen, we come to church, we come to church exhausted, worn out. Yeah. And so to be able to come to church and there's safe places that we can share about the hard, the painful, the stuff that we don't know what to do with. Have people say, yes, we'll pray for you. That's great. And I need it. But faith communities can also offer practical support. There's practical needs that could be. What if every church became mental health literate? I know that's kind of like right up your alley. That's what I know you believe at Sanctuary. And there didn't used to be those kind of supports. There are. So for a church to take the time to learn about mental illness, to learn about practical ways to serve these burdened, weary families, what a gift. What gifts of love and Christ-likeness, can be given.
Listening can be costly, right? Emotionally, spiritually, even physically. I wonder, how do you care for yourself so that you remain someone who can continue to show up and truly listen and be present, especially when you're listening or caring for someone who has deep, deep suffering?
I'm not a therapist, but I know therapists have to develop a certain sort of layer of skin, I suppose, that allows for some detachment, because you can't carry the weight of everyone. But I'm not a therapist, and so I come at it a little bit differently. I see myself more as a minister of the comfort that God has given to me. But I remember there was a period a few years ago, right before when I was really, really involved in suicide prevention, probably the first 7 years after Matthew passed away, there was just this urgency to try to prevent suicide, to make sure that other families, didn't walk through what we had walked through, to reach to people who were feeling that kind of despair before they, maybe made that final decision that was irrevocable. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking that the ground of my heart was saturated like heavy rains had just come for days or weeks, and the ground could not absorb any more water. And so the ground of my soul was saturated. I couldn't bear one more person's loss, and trying to carry that. And I remember talking to a spiritual director, and I said, I know that this is a part of my life. This has come into our lives. God will use it. He has. But I don't know how. I've got to have some joy somewhere in this. I can't keep doing this like this. And she really urged me to look for ways that brought joy into my life. And around the same time, I talked to Diane Langberg, who, that incredible psychologist who has been on the front lines in the Christian world of talking with trauma survivors, people who've experienced sexual abuse. And she has seen the dregs of humanity. And I asked her that a similar question. I said, what do you do? What do you do with all that darkness? And she said, I do the exact opposite. I run to the light. I've written this down because this is what she said. I run to the light. I make sure that part of every day includes running to the light, to Jesus, the light of the world, to nature, to beauty, to goodness, to wholeness. And that, I took that in and said, that's it. That's it. That's how I can continue to bear hearing and being a part of people's sorrowful stories, of people's sadnesses, of people's losses, is that I have to make sure every day that I am running toward the exact opposite. I'm running to the light, basically Philippians 4:8. I'm running toward goodness, toward wholeness. I'm making sure I'm still. I mean, all of those things that fill me, so that I can be with other people in their most vulnerable moments of loss and heartache and pain, and not be absorbed and consumed by the darkness.
Very intentional. That's very good. Very good. Okay, just before we jumped on this call, I made a comment to you, which is something that I feel like a mantra I live by. And I often say to people, if the church is going to be successful in its mission in this day and age, or win back the generations, these are the things we want to do, right? We want to see people in relationship with Christ, in relationship with each other, living in that shalom. But if the church does that, it will be to a church that learns to listen. And often implicitly, as a Christian being formed, and many years ago, I think I was kind of taught that the Christian faith was all about proclamation. But the older I get, I think really this is about learning how to listen. Anyway, I wonder if there's anything you want to say to that.
When I think about these things, I think of the people who've helped shape me. And everybody I've mentioned today have been people who've helped shape me. And that it made me think of a quote. I had written it down when I was, thinking about this conversation, that the author Taylor Caldwell said that man's real need, his most terrible need, is for someone to listen to him, not as a patient, but as a human soul. And to me, what that says is our suffering doesn't always have answers. Listen, we can't. We just don't. We don't have this. Some of these answers will never come till we see Jesus face to face. So our suffering doesn't always have answers, but it needs to be listened to, witnessed, and held. And I think that's what Taylor Caldwell is saying, is that there's a value of therapists, and a therapist is paid to listen, and sometimes that's really valuable, and you should go to your therapist and all those good things. But it just speaks to what you said. Our greatest need is just to have somebody listen to all those heaped up things in our hearts, and our suffering be witnessed. Somebody say, I'm with you in it, and I'll hold it for you. I'll hold it with you.
That's so good. And none of these things are a surprise to God.
No.
He knows these things. He can hold them.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Kate, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. What you've shared about learning to listen before speaking, and about the way Matthew's life and death opened up a deeper kind of ministry of listening in you, hard fought through pain, but just how the redemptive edge of that painful part has created this beautiful legacy of advocacy and calling the church to listen more. I think it's something that the people watching this will carry with them for a long time. So thank you for your generosity in sharing that story with us.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks always for your invitations.
Oh, so good. Bless you, Kay. Well,
Bless you
to everyone watching, thank you for spending this time with us. If you've been following along through May, we hope these conversations have been nourishing and that they've given you some language and some courage for the conversations that matter most in your own communities. Mental health deserves our attention every month of the year, but there's something meaningful about pausing together in May to create space for these stories. And we're grateful to every guest who's joined us this month and to you for listening alongside. If you haven't already, we'd love to connect with you on Instagram, where we share resources and reflections and updates from the Sanctuary community. And if this conversation has stirred something in you, there are more rich conversations in this series worth exploring. Thank you for joining us, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, friends, for listening together to Kay and Daniel in that incredible conversation. I think I was so moved, and I've heard it a few times now, but by Kay's reaction to being validated in her experience, that when we listen to people and recognize and witness what they are experiencing, what they are carrying, be it grief or an experience of mental health challenge in themselves or as a caregiver, there's something so beautiful and freeing about being seen in that. So that's giving me lots to think about as I go on with my day. As we end our time together, feels like the end of an era, the end of our month, doing these lives, there is more to look forward to. So just as a recap, if you're just joining us for the first time, go back and have a look through our YouTube channel. Check out the lived experience stories that we've posted throughout the month. Look at the other conversations with Dr. Hilary McBride and Dr. Reverend John Swinton. And maybe hit subscribe for upcoming events that we'll have posted here as well. Go check out our socials, Instagram and Facebook, even LinkedIn if you want, to follow along with things that Sanctuary is doing. On social media, you will find some facts that we've shared this month, some beautiful prayers. I'd also note that we released a devotional this month with the YouVersion app, and you can go check that out. I also want to mention that we released a song in partnership with the incredible worship artist Temitope that's called Dawn Chorus. And I was reminded of it as Kay shared about the quote about running towards the light. What a beautiful invitation to us as we listen to each other. I think I just want to close out by sharing about one of our incredible resources. We've heard about the importance of parents as caregivers of young people living with severe mental illness, but we also know, probably from experience, or maybe we've just heard the stats, that youth mental health is definitely something that we as a church ought to attend to. And so we did. We created a resource called the Sanctuary Youth Series, and you can find it on our resource portal. So that's another thing. All of Sanctuary's resources are free. We have the Sanctuary course for Catholics, When a Loved One Dies by Suicide, and the Sanctuary Youth Series. And all you need to do to access them is go in, say hello, give us your name and email, and you'll be directed to our resource portal. And you can access these for free and share them with people that you think they may be helpful to or in your church community. The Sanctuary Youth Series is focused on pressing questions young people are asking about mental health and faith, and gives youth, their parents, that's me, well, only to 4 boys, and their church leaders the tools needed to have these vital conversations. So stay in touch, friends. We'd love to continue the conversation. We're so grateful that you joined us for a little or a lot of this month of awareness when we tried really hard to learn from listening to different voices. And we'll close out with a trailer of the youth series. God bless you.
Hi, my name is Amy.
And I'm Nathan.
We're the hosts of the Sanctuary Youth Series. If you're watching this, you probably have a vested interest in 3 things: youth, mental health, and faith.
Whether you're journeying with young people as a youth leader, teacher, or parent, you might be facing various questions that arise around mental health. We want to help you engage in these critical conversations with youth.
After listening to the questions that young people around the world are asking, we designed this series to address the most common ones. Like, what does the Bible say about mental health?
Why do I feel this way?
What happens when we talk about mental health challenges?
If you have a mental health challenge, can you get better?
Or how can I help my friend?
What can I do to take care of my mental health?
So journey with us for 8 sessions as we unpack these questions.
In each session, you and your group will watch an interactive film where we'll present compelling content that engages with the question, weaving together psychology and theology in a way that is easy to understand.
We'll also hear from 8 young Christians who share their stories of living with a mental health challenge.
Their stories will help reduce the secular and spiritual stigma around mental health and give your group people to empathize with and relate to.
The series also includes games, exercises, and prayers that you can participate in as a group, as well as discussion questions to help break up the films and keep your group engaged.
And a summary of the series, along with useful resources that can be sent out to parents.
So to get started, head to Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries website and create a free account on the resource portal today.